Welcome to the Your Sparkly Brand podcast, the podcast designed to inspire and empower female entrepreneurs. On this podcast, we share valuable how-to content, discuss common mindset challenges, and interview kick-ass women business owners. In a world that tries to pit females against each other, Your Sparkly Brand is celebrating successful women and nurturing the next generation so we can uplift each other. I'm Lauren Tassi, and I'm here with my co-host, Megan Gersh.
Hey, what's up?
How's it going? How's your week been?
Oh, it's been super good. It's been a very, very busy week. I actually just hired a virtual assistant this week. So very, very exciting news on my end.
Oh, that's awesome. I need to do that. I'm hiring some other people in my business right now, but I need to figure out what to do with the virtual assistant before I can hire them. My sparkly moment of the week, which is a thing we're going to do here on the podcast now, is just sort of talk about our, kind of like a win for the week. Mine, actually, this is different than the one I wrote down because I think it's better. I hired for anybody who doesn't know, I'm getting married next spring in Mexico, and I have a wedding planner and she's great. And I actually hired her to plan our welcome party on top of the wedding. It was something I was trying to do. I was like, you know what, I could do this. I'll do it with the hotel. And then of course, all of a sudden it's just becomes more and more stuff to do. And I woke up in the middle of the night one night last week and couldn't go back to sleep because I was thinking about it. And the next morning I was like, I'm just going to hire her to do this. There's no way the amount of money I will save not hiring her will not equal the hours lost in my work. So that feels like a good decision on my part.
Time is money. You have to do that kind of thing. Outsourcing is definitely one of those things that can alleviate so much stress in your life, especially when you have 1,000 other things going on as a business owner.
Totally. So let's get into the good stuff we're talking about today. This topic is just something I've literally dealt with my entire life. And this podcast is actually a great representation of how both Meg and I are trying to conquer it. And our topic today is perfectionism. It's just one of those things that I've always struggled with. And I think that's why this podcast is so great, is because we could sit around and wait until it's perfect and record an episode 3 times, or we could just do it.
Yeah. And I think that is something that, especially as somebody that creates a lot of content online, or at least I feel like I create a lot of content every single day. It's one of those things where you just have to let go a little bit of it. You have to just give in to understanding that not everything is going to be perfect. Getting it out there is more important than getting it perfect. And so it's definitely something that I struggle with on a daily basis as a designer, especially. It can be really hard where you see little tiny details that need to be updated and stuff like that, visually. It just can be a struggle sometimes. So
yeah, totally. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what is perfectionism? Because for me, I really for a long time thought perfectionism was a good thing. That was always the answer to what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? And I always said perfectionism was my strength, but it's not a good thing. It's really hard to live up to because nobody's perfect. And it's something that really gives you a false sense of control because you feel well, it's not perfect, so it's not going out there yet. And I'm a perfectionist. I identify as a perfectionist, and nothing that's not perfect doesn't go out into the world. So it just sort of keeps you from moving forward instead of just doing something that's good enough and getting it out there.
I totally relate to that because as somebody who's creating content all the time and, designing things for clients, and there is a special pressure there that you feel like you want to deliver, right? You feel like you want to perform for your audience and essentially deliver the best value that you can for the person that's on the other end of the screen. And I think that perfectionism is definitely one of those things where at some point you just have to let it go. You have to just say, okay, this is good enough. We're getting it out there. Getting it out there is more productive than just sitting here agonizing over it for the next day, 2 days, a week, whatever, however long it's one of those things that feeds procrastination in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Like you were saying, the procrastination thing I remember I was listening to a podcast a couple of years ago, and it was basically perfectionism is just procrastination in disguise. And that thought just kind of blew my mind because I realized that's exactly what I was doing. Procrastination is something I've always dealt with too. In school, I never did my homework. I if I had to write an essay, could only do it the night before because I had that pressure on me. And then when I realized, I was like, oh, that's what that is. I'm not procrastinating because I don't want to do it, but I know I'm going to do it. So I just sort of needed that pressure to do it. And realizing that that's what perfectionism was doing to me really helped me see that again, here's just another reason why it's not a good thing. And it keeps you stuck in your comfort zone, right? Because instead of, and you put so much content out there that you just have to do it. You have to like just move forward with it not being perfect.
Yeah, totally. And I think that it's kind of interesting to think about how social media has really shaped our society in a way that like creating things means that you will be judged. Like you will be judged no matter what you do. If you do something cool, people are going to judge you. If you do something not so cool, like people are going to judge you too. Like no matter what you do, you will be judged. You might as well just get it out there because if it makes you happy, if it's propelling your business forward in some way, if it's benefiting you in some way, then I always like to say like, okay, this is good enough. Might as well push it out there and get it done. And you know what? Let them decide. Like let the people decide what they think. In that moment, you need to shift your mindset back to just creating more stuff to push out there. There's that famous Andy Warhol quote. I'm going to butcher it right now, but it's something in the vein of like, just focus on creating art. And while they're deciding what they think of your art, just create more art.
I love that. Yeah, that's one of those things too, where like when I'm writing, especially for clients sometimes, and I just like get in my head and I feel like I'm getting really stuck and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm going to get up and go get a snack or get up and go walk around and just try and get away from it. But then I have to kind of, if I stop myself and I remember, okay, they hired me because I'm a writer, because I can write better than they can. So even like some of my worst stuff, my clients are thrilled with. And It's just me holding myself up to these unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, I think that is a really important thing to realize. If somebody's hiring you as an expert, like they've hired you for a reason, right? Like it's because they don't want to do it or they feel confident that somebody else might be able to serve them better than they can serve themselves.
Yeah, totally. And then the one other thing I wanted to add about, just all the things that make up perfectionism is also the all or nothing thinking, which, expands beyond work. Even it's like, if you're like, okay, well, I'm not drinking this month. And then you like slip up and have one drink, you go, all right, well, screw that. I'm just like drinking all the wine or, whatever it is. It's just that sort of like not being able to make one small mistake and recover from it and just sort of going down a wormhole of bad decisions because you slipped up once.
I totally relate to that because I used to have this special pressure on myself to get X number of social media posts out every day. If I didn't hit that number every single day, I would be really, really hard on myself and like really kind of beat myself up about it. But then quite frankly, I started going to therapy. That really helped me to kind of like release some of that, like, okay, is the world really going to end if I don't put out, 10 social media posts today? Like, no. Like, are people really going to care? Are people really going to be like, you know what, Megan, like I didn't hear from you 3 times today and that really messed up my day. So no, that's never, ever happened in any social media world.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. That takes us perfectly to the next thing I wanted to talk about is like, why is perfectionism a bad thing? And it's because you will never be perfect. And then when you're actually doing a great job, like if you're putting out 3 social media posts a day, that's great. But then you feel like a failure because you're not putting out 10 social media posts. That's just ridiculous. I have like a to-do list every single day I put. And honestly, most days it's not all getting done. And I realize like, then I just like kind of end the day like in a slump because it's like, oh, but I didn't get to it all. But it was all like completely an unreasonable expectation of things that were going to get done in my day.
Yeah, totally. So I mentioned that I started therapy earlier, but like one of the things that my therapist taught me that is honestly one of the most valuable things that I've gotten out of therapy has been looking at your to-do list almost as, instead of looking at items that you have to get done, look at it as a done list. So look at all of these things that I got done today instead of, oh my God, I didn't get XYZ done or whatever. Instead, looking at it as, oh my gosh, I recorded a podcast today. I had an intro call with a potential client. I worked on this other project for a client. I got a social media post out today. Wow, that's like a lot of stuff. Like I fed myself, I showered, I took the dog for a walk. Like all of the things that we normally don't give ourselves credit for. There are a lot of things that kind of add up in our day that we don't really think about. And we think about when we have our to-do list, like that is our kind of work to-do list, but in reality, we're doing a lot more things that take our energy and that we're spending time and effort to complete in the day.
I love that so much. I haven't heard about that, like kind of a reverse to-do list, because it's like there's things that like maybe don't get planned to get done, but do get done. Sometimes it's like you do get sucked into emails with clients back and forth. And even if that wasn't your intention of how you're spending your time, it's still progress. So yeah, I love that so much.
Yeah, I thought it was like a really unique way to look at things. And honestly, it's just so simple. Like it's just a simple kind of mindset shift of, instead of looking at to-dos, look at it as what I got done today. But it really does help to kind of shift your perspective a little bit.
Yeah. So I want to share a story on perfectionism. And this is sort of like and I talk about this on my website, actually. This is sort of why it's always been a problem for me. So when I was a little kid, I would cry at my birthday parties, like bawl my eyes out, because they weren't going as I had like perfectly planned in my head, right? Especially like between ages of like 5 and 10. I feel like those were the worst ones. My mom would she always put a lot of effort into our birthday party. She loved like that creative side of things. And then like all my friends would come over, and I would just I think I would just build them up so much in my head. It's like, first we're going to do the scavenger hunt, and then we're going to open presents, and then we're going to eat cake. But then these hooligans, right? These crazy kids would just do whatever they wanted to do. And then like maybe this person wouldn't talk to this person. And like, I wanted everyone to sit in a seat like I had planned. And I would just it wouldn't go as I had so perfectly envisioned. And then I would just be disappointed immediately. And I would start crying, and I'd have to go upstairs, and my mom would be like, "What's wrong? It's your birthday party." And I'd be like, "They're not listening to me. They're not doing what I want." And it's just if somebody could have told me to chill out, then that would have been great. And if the message had gotten through, but it's just like a reflection of those feelings of sort of setting up expectations, not communicating them, right? Because that's always a big thing. Is everybody has their own rules or their own expectations in their head about what's supposed to happen. But if you're not communicating them to other people, there's no way people are ever going to meet those expectations. So I've gotten better since then. And definitely, the wedding, I think that's going to be a good thing to try and, not set expectations for, and just, plan to have a fun time. But yeah, it's been a problem my whole life.
That's such a funny example. And I totally get what you're saying, by the way, because I was I didn't cry at my own birthday parties, but I definitely have had instances where in my childhood, I would plan things out like that, and was just very much a planner from a very young age, wanted everything to be to a T. But I'm curious, do you still keep in touch with any of those people? Did you lose friends over any of that?
They're still Facebook friends, and
Okay.
now they all have their own kids, and hopefully they're not all crying at their own kids' birthdays.
That's so funny. Oh gosh. It's funny that you mentioned your wedding too, because that was actually going to kind of be my example of, wanting everything to be perfect. Planning a wedding is a lot of work. For those that are listening that haven't planned a wedding before, or haven't been involved in a wedding planning situation, there are a lot of moving parts that you have to organize, that you have to coordinate. And it's honestly the biggest day of your life, right? That's the day that you want to be perfect, when in reality, when it comes down to it, that day is going to be perfect no matter what, right? It's honestly, if I had to go back and relive one day of my life, that would be it over and over and over. It would just be all of my friends surrounding me, the most beautiful people in the world, just a beautiful setting, just having an amazing party and just being together and celebrating. And it's just the best. And it's one of those things where you definitely put a lot of pressure on yourself in the planning phase. There's a few mental breakdowns that happen along the way, let's be honest. And a little bit of overwhelm that happens with it, but it's all worth it in the end. It's one of those things that everybody does their part. It all comes together at the end, and it just winds up being the best day. On top of that too, there's all of those little things that you think are going to matter for your wedding don't really wind up mattering that much. No one's going to care what silverware you have for your place settings and stuff like that. No one's going to care if there is a card on the table with their name on it. they're really going to remember the experience, the vibe of the party, the people that you have there, and the important stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that both of our sort of perfectionism things are kind of around like parties and, like, cause those moments, they just have so much like built into them, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, and especially it's like you always, even going into any type of event, right? Like you have some kind of expectation of what's going to be, even if it's not an event that you are planning for yourself, right? Like if you are attending an event, or like you have an idea built up around like what that night is going to be like. Oh, I'm so excited for this party, or like I'm excited to go out because these people are going.
Yeah. So, okay, we talked about how perfectionism shows up in parties, but let's let's steer it back to our work, our business, our marketing conversation. So for me, like, it's one of those things that like, if honestly, you feel like your work is never good enough. Right now, I'm working on redoing the copy on my website just to sort of, cause I'm changing my business around a little bit. And that is just, it's so hard, especially like, and I'm sure it's the same thing with you when it comes to like the design of your website and the visual of it. It's just like, well, I'm a copywriter. So the copy on my website had better be the best copy anyone has ever read. When in fact, it doesn't need to be, it needs to be good and great and, get people's attention, but it doesn't have to be the best thing ever written. And so I get stuck a bit trying to just move forward and let it go, especially because it's my work and my business.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a thought too around, for example, like I offer social media content creation as a service that I offer. So I feel personally that my social media has to look well put together. It has to look a certain way. It has to feel a certain way in order for clients to trust that I can do that for them. So there is a certain level of perfectionism that goes with that. Again, I'm trying to get better at just like, okay, let's just create it and then put it out, create it and put it out. It needs to look good enough. And then we just put it out and move on.
Yeah. One other way that I know it's come up for me, and this is actually a design project I worked on when Alex and I worked on his book together. I did the cover for it, and we used to have it sort of up in our living room, like kind of on the edge of a bookshelf. We had like one copy left in our house. We ultimately gave that away, and I'm glad it's not there anymore. But I would see the cover up on the shelf, and I'd just be like sitting there watching TV, and my eyes would go over to it, and I'd be like, "Oh, this is everything I would change in it right now." Like 6 months later, being like, oh, "I'd make that a little bigger," and so I can't, like, the visual stuff. I can totally understand how that gets to you even more because you're not even reading something, and then your eye just goes to it. You're redoing it in your head.
Yeah, I think it's hard, especially to when we're working on our own things, especially because it's like, it's how we're going to be perceived, right? Like this is the copy, the design. This is how people are going to see us as individuals. Again, all goes back to like, people are going to judge you. People are going to judge you. So what kind of vibe do you want to put off?
And another way that perfectionism comes up for me is just like going down a research wormhole whenever I'm writing something, and then sometimes it'll be like, oh, well, let me see what this brand's doing. And then let me check on this brand. And then all of a sudden, like a half hour, 45 minutes have gone by. I've done no writing. I've done no real, like, even like compiling of research. I'm just sort of stuck looking what other people are doing. And then you sort of get in that sort of like analysis paralysis thing where now you've got like too much inspiration or too many ideas, when what I really should have done was like looked at one or two things and then made some progress with my work.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely gotten stuck in that wormhole too. And one thing that's really helped me with that is using the Pomodoro method. I don't know if you've ever used that before, but basically you just set a timer for the task that you're going to do. So you say, okay, for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to be researching X topic. And then you open up a document for your notes, and then you just pull inspiration as quickly as possible. And by the end of the 20 minutes, you will have a full research document ready to go. There's another quote too that says like, you will get things done in the amount of time that you allow for them. So it's like, if you say, okay, I'm going to clean my house sometime this week, then you'll get it done within the week. But if you say, okay, I'm going to clean my house today in the next 2 hours, then you'll get it done in the next 2 hours.
That is totally true. I've had some projects come in like right before I want to go on vacation or something. And it's amazing how much writing I can get done in a couple of days when I'm getting on a plane, and just like getting it over with. I'm like, wow, I did like $1,000 worth of writing today. And it's like, if I'm always working, I mean, I can't always work at that level, but it is possible. Because I totally believe that like time is something, it's much more about how you perceive it than a clock ticking by.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you have any tips for overcoming perfectionism?
Well, I think you've already given us some great ones. I love the done list, right? Instead of the to-do list, the done list. The Pomodoro thing. You know what? I need to do more shorter bits of it. I have like a timer on my computer, and I always set it to an hour because I feel like I think Pomodoro is technically like 25 minutes.
Mhm.
And I feel like I can't get much writing done in 25 minutes, but an hour is a good chunk. But I think breaking up the task within the hour is going to be really helpful too. And then the other thing is I just kind of living by the motto progress over perfection. I don't know who started that, but it's just getting things out there, because letting something sit in your drafts folder for, 3 weeks while you think you're perfecting it in your head, you're really probably not making it that much better when you could have just gotten it out there and had 5 other things also out there in that amount of time you were stalling.
I actually recently heard about this method. I have not tried it out yet, full disclaimer, but it was interesting to me. So basically, you make two different lists. One is like a list of things that you need to get done, and then you also make a list of things that you enjoy. And the psychology behind it is, if you can pair one of the things from each of the lists, you perhaps might enjoy it more. So let's say, for example, you have to begin a website outline on your to-do list for today. Maybe one of the things on your enjoy list is spending some time outside. So if you were to do the website outline outside together at the same time, there's potential that you might enjoy those tasks a little bit more. But basically, you just make a list of 5 things in each column and try to match them up whenever you can.
Oh, I like that. Something I do sometimes, especially if I'm like in a rut, I go, how can I make this more fun? And sometimes the answer is like, go get, go make a nice coffee, or put on better music. Or sometimes it's like, okay, well, you can take your computer and go lounge on the couch and do it from that position. And it does sometimes it gets me out of a rut of not wanting to be productive.
Yeah, definitely. Environment is a huge factor on productivity. And I think even if you're feeling stuck, and this is kind of getting off topic a little bit, but if you're feeling stuck and you feel like you've hit a wall with writing or web design or whatever, like creatively, shifting your environment in the slightest bit can help you tremendously. And just moving to a different room, or moving from the couch to the desk, or moving to somewhere outside, like it can help you tremendously when you're in kind of a creative kind of block state.
Absolutely. Another thing that, this is something I'm always struggling with, but is like setting realistic goals and expectations. And sometimes it's about maybe breaking a big project into smaller tasks. So yeah, if I'm completely rewriting my website, I'm not going to do that in one day, but I could work on this section of it and this page, and then feel like, okay, well, I put my hour in on that. I got somewhere, where at 1 hour on rewriting my whole website is, not going to make much of a dent in it.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And one thing that kind of goes with that too is saying no to the things that you either don't want to do or you don't have time to do. Saying no cannot always be a bad thing. Oftentimes, it's a great thing for your mental health, for your productivity, and kind of your overall business state.
Absolutely. And then not comparing yourself to others and what they're doing and what their output looks like, for the reason that you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes in their business. It does you no good if you're spending even seconds just looking at what someone else is doing and sort of going, well, what does my business look like in that area? It's not a productive use of your time, and because you are not them. And you're doing what you're doing because you have something special to offer the world, not because you're just following in the footsteps of somebody else.
Yeah, I have to definitely comment on this too, just because I'm so heavily immersed in the social media world. I feel like it's so easy to fall into that comparison trap with other business owners and say like, oh, well, this business they only launched like 2 weeks ago and they already have 60,000 followers, or like people focus a lot on these vanity metrics that in reality don't really matter. Like followers don't equal sales. Let's just put that out there. And you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. I've heard stories of business owners that have gone viral in their business and they have ended their business because of that, because they weren't ready for virality. They basically got overwhelmed with orders. Like people didn't get their orders for months, and it just ruined their business. So it's like, you don't always have the full picture based on what you see on social media. Very rarely do you have that full picture of what's actually going on. So just keep that in mind the next time that you are perhaps looking at someone else's profile and checking out somebody's business.
Yeah. And then the other thing I always try to do, and it can be hard when you're like in the middle of, overwhelm or a rut, is just really looking at the big picture and focusing on the tasks that move the needle versus the things that maybe feel like you should be doing them. So for me, the thing that's been on my to-do list for weeks and months is like to start posting regularly on social media. It's not really at this point a needle mover in my business, just because my leads come from, different sources. And that's why I haven't gotten to it yet. But I plan to one day start posting on social media again.
Yeah. And it's important to kind of note too, that like social media is not going to be for everybody, right? Like it just depends on your business. And obviously, like I would do the same too if I were in your shoes. And if in the past, like social media hadn't moved the needle for me, I probably wouldn't be prioritizing it either. The thing about like marketing is that all marketing methods work. Honestly, like consistency is going to win over everything else. If you are consistently putting yourself out there, your content can be, mid-level to like high level. It doesn't have to be super polished and perfect and all of this stuff. Like consistency also speaks volumes when it comes to social media, email marketing, any type of marketing, really. It helps to assert your business as like a reliable source just because you are showing up constantly with the same message over and over. So that consistency is going to build that trust anyway. This is why your content pieces don't have to be perfect every single time. It's like, you're already building trust by showing up over and over.
Absolutely. And it's way better to send your weekly email that's great, that's tailored to your audience, than to, forget about that and then start posting over here. And then, oh, wait, there's something new and shiny. I want to try this thing. To really just kind of pick one, own that, and then consider exploring other options.
I couldn't agree more with that. So that's it for perfectionism. If you guys would like to follow us on social media at Your Sparkly Brand, we would love to have you. And if you have a sparkly brand yourself, or if you have suggestions for female entrepreneurs that you'd like to see on the podcast, please write us an email at hello@yoursparklybrand.com. And until next time, stay sparkly.
Bye.